Sponsored by Rabbi Shlomi and Mirala Greenwald. This is a Sicha from Likutei Sichos, Chelek Gimmel, Parshas Behaalosecha Sicha Beis, and the topic of the Sicha is that in this week's Parsha we learn the pasuk of Va'ish Moshe Anavah Ma'od Mikol Adam Asher Al Pnei Adama. That Moshe was extremely humble. He was a greater Anavah than all people that are on the face of the earth. And there are three parts in the Sicha. It's actually a very long Sicha, but we're just breaking it down over here into three parts. The Rebbe will, number one, ask a question on this. Number two, present and extensively discuss the Siyum Masechtas Sotah that talks about Anavah. So this Sicha is also a Siyum of Masechtas Sotah. And number three, based on this, the discussion about the Siyum Masechtas Sotah, answer our original question. On the pasuk in our parsha, it's towards the end of our parsha. Va'ish Moshe Anavah Ma'od Mikol Adam Asher Al Pnei Adama. That Moshe was exceedingly humble. He was more humble than any person on the face of the earth. So it's not understood over here at all. But Moshe, and we're going to say 8 things. Number 1, he was Kibbul Torah Sinai. Number 2, Hashem taught him Torah for 40 days and 40 nights. Number 3, Hashem gave him the Torah as a gift. Number 4, Moshe Rabbeinu took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. Number 5, Hashem told him B'cho Yaminu Lo'olam. Number 6, he spoke to the Shekhinah whenever he wanted to. Number 7, he heard the Skenim would get from his Ruach and he wouldn't lose anything. And number 8, compared to the Yidden, he was Ka'ayman Le'yonik, like a nursing mother and a baby that is nursing. And so the question is, how is it possible that he was Anavah Mikol Adam, that he was humble, he was more humble than any person on the face of the earth, if he had all of these tremendously great qualities? The answer that's explained is, and this is a quote from teachings of the Frierdiker Rebbe, as well as the Rebbe Rashab, even though Moshe Rabbeinu knew his good qualities and that he was greater on his level than all other people, and nevertheless he was humble more than anyone else. And this is because he knew that all of his greatnesses, all of his qualities, that with them he was greater in his level and his stature than anyone else. It's from what was given to him from above. And he thought to himself, that if these qualities, if these abilities were by someone else, he would also be on this level and this greatness. And it's possible, and elsewhere it's not even brought down that it's possible, but rather that he thought with certainty, that if someone else had these koiches that he had, he would reveal these koiches even more than Moshe Rabbeinu did. And because of this, he was an Anavah more than anyone else. And the Rebbe adds over here that from this explanation it's understood that this explanation that we have over here from the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab of Ish Moshe Anavah, it isn't different than the simple meaning of Anavah that we say it means to feel hachna, like a certain sense of lowliness or smallness before every person. And because it's not different than that simple explanation, therefore it doesn't just say that he knew that everything that he had was from above, which only negates his snasus. That only negates that a person shouldn't feel better because it's not his, it was given to him from above. But over here we also see the element of achna, feeling smaller and lower than others. That's why over there it adds, it's possible, and like we said elsewhere, it's not even brought down that he said he thought that it was possible, but rather that it was certain, that he believed that if someone else had these koiches, he would reveal them even more than Moshe Rabbeinu did, which brings hachna to others. So this is the explanation that's brought for saying that Moshe Rabbeinu was more humble than any person on the face of the earth, because he felt and he believed that all of the things that he had all the strengths and the qualities that he had were given to him from above. And furthermore, he thought that it's possible, or even he thought for sure, that if someone else had these kaichos, they would actualize them even more than he did. And so therefore, despite all of his great qualities, he was more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. And the question over here is, according to this, we have to understand the main mila of Moshe compared to all others was in regards to his nevuah. And like it's explained in our parsha, the greatness of the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, to the extent that v'loi kom navi eid b'Yisrael k'Moshe, no navi ever existed among the Yidden like Moshe Rabbeinu. And so the question is, nevuah doesn't come through the avodah of a person, but rather it's given milmila. If it comes through the avodah, then what we said until now makes sense. Moshe Rabbeinu believed that if someone else worked on what he had, they would achieve more than he did. However, nevuah doesn't come through avodah, but rather it's given milmila. Hashem just gives it to a person, not as a direct result of what a person did. And in such matters of things that come from above, we can't say that acher hoye megalas hakeiches yeser, someone else would reveal these abilities, these keiches even more, because it's not something Moshe Rabbeinu did himself that he could think someone else would do a better job of it, but rather it's something that was given to him. So if so, why was Moshe Anav me'oid mikol adam when in his most important area, which is the idea of nevuah, he was a mamayla mikol adam. He was greater than everyone else, and it was something that you can't say someone else would be able to achieve a higher level, since it didn't result from his avodah. Nobody else through their avodah would be able to do more, but rather it's given from Hashem. So this will be understood by first explaining what's taught at the end, the Siyum of Masechta Sotah. In the mission over there, it teaches that Mishemes Rebbe, that from when Rebbe passed away, Batla Anavah v'Yiras Chet. So there was no longer Anavah and Yiras Chet in the world. And in the Gemara it teaches, and this is the very end of Masechta Sotah, Amrle Rav Yosef Latana. Rav Yosef said to the Tana who taught the Mishnayos, Leitisni Anavah. Don't read in the Mishnah that Batla Anavah. Don't read the word Anavah over there. The Ika Anah, because there's I, Rav Yosef, and I am an Anav. The Gemara continues, Amrle Rav Nachman Latana. Rav Nachman said to the Tana who taught the teachings of the Mishnah, Leitisni Yiras Chet, the Ika Anah. Don't read in the Mishnah that Batla Yiras Chet, because there's I Rav Nachman, and I have Yiras Chet. So don't read that it was Batal from the passing of Rebbe, because it's still around by me. And there are two questions here. And as we'll see, once we ask the second question, just by that question itself, the first question is already removed. So the first question is, both Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman were in the same generation. And it makes sense that each of them recognized the greatness of the other. And like we indeed find, that Rav Yosef said about Rav Nachman that der Shinu Lahani Kroi Kesinai. The way he taught it was just like the way it was given by Har Sinai. It was as if it was being taught by Har Sinai. And Rav Nachman called Rav Yosef with the name Sinai, which is a type of learning that the Tana had a tremendous amount of knowledge in terms of the kamos, the quantity. And if so, if that's the case, that they probably recognize the greatness of the other, and like we indeed find that they did. So the question is, why did each of them choose their own greatness, and they didn't say to the Tana not to say the entire teaching of Batla Anavah v'Yiras Chet? How come Rav Yosef only told the Tana, don't read in the Mishnah that Anavah was Batla, because I am an Anav? And Rav Nachman told the Tana just not to read into the Mishnah that Batla Yiras Chet, because I have Yiras Chet. Why didn't each of them say to the Tana, don't read this entire statement that Batla Anavah v'Yiras Chet, because Rav Yosef has Anavah and Rav Nachman has Yiras Chet? And if each of them spoke of their own greatness, they should have certainly spoke and publicized the greatness of their fellow. And the second question is, and really the content of the second question answers a certain part of the first question, as we'll see. So the second question is, since each one said Leis Sisni about one greatness only, their own greatness, this implies that each one holds that the other greatness was indeed batla. So it answers in a way the first question that we asked. They must have recognized the other's greatness. The answer is they did, and they still believe that the other didn't have the greatness that they said they had. But now the question is going to have to be, the first question, so to speak, will turn into a different question, which is, why did each one think about the other that his greatness wasn't what he said it was? But let's continue now in the second question, that since each one said leisisni about only one greatness, so this implies that each one holds that the other greatness was indeed batla. And the question is, what we learned in a brisa of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, that Anavah mevil de yiras. This is a brisa, a teaching of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, Mesechus Avodah Zarah, meaning that through Anavah, because Anavah brings to yiras, one comes to yiras. So the question is, if so, it's a question of Rav Nachman. How is it possible that the lower level of Anavah is batla, at the very same time when the greater level of yiras is not batla? So we have over here, at the end over here, two questions. One question, how come Rav Yosef didn't say Rav Nachman had the greatness that Rav Nachman said that he had? And how come Rav Nachman didn't say that Rav Yosef had the greatness that Rav Yosef said that he had? And then the second question is specifically on Rav Nachman. And after this, we'll just merge it into one question. The question is going to be, how come each one didn't say the other one had the greatness that they said that they had? And a separate question on Rav Nachman, how could it be that the lower level of Anavah is batla and the higher level of yiras is not batla? Now, it would seem that we could answer that Rav Nachman holds like the opinion of Rabbi Shua ben Levi. It's brought in the Gemara over there after the opinion of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, that Rabbi Shua ben Levi says that Anavah is greater than yiras. And this is also the opinion of the Yerushalmi, according to the Girsa of Taisvis, that yiras comes before and brings to Anavah. So Anavah is greater than yiras. So therefore, it makes sense that Rav Nachman holds that Anavah is batla and not yiras, which yiras is lower than Anavah. So that would be the answer for the opinion of Rav Nachman. How is it possible that there's still yiras and there's no longer Anavah? Because he holds like Rabbi Shua ben Levi, which is also the opinion of the Yerushalmi, that Anavah is greater than yiras. Yiras is lower than Anavah. So it's possible that there's still yiras, but there's no longer Anavah. The lower thing yiras is there, the higher thing Anavah is no longer there. And according to this, the argument between Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman depends on the argument of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rav Yosef holds like Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair that Anavah is lower than yiras. So it could be that there's no longer yiras, which is higher, but there's still Anavah, which is lower. And Rav Nachman holds like Rabbi Shua ben Levi that yiras is lower than Anavah. And so it could be that there's no longer Anavah, which is higher, but there is still yiras, which is lower. And there are two questions in this answer. The first question is, even though lo re'inu einei raya, if you don't see something, it's not a proof that it's not true. So even though we don't find anywhere that the argument of Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman is the same argument of Rav Pinchas ben Yair and Rav Shua ben Levi, but nevertheless, we don't find anywhere to say that Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman are arguing about the same argument of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair and Rav Shua ben Levi who came before them. It's difficult to say that we have this argument of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair and Rav Shua ben Levi who came first, and then we're going to say that that's the very same argument between Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman, and it's not really written anywhere. It's difficult to say this. And the second question is, we find that Rav Nachman was Mechasidei Bavel, and Rav Yosef was Sinai, which is the style of learning of the Yerushalmi. And so it will come out that it's the opposite, that Rav Yosef will fit with the Bavli, which, like we said, is the opinion of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, which is taught in Talmud Bavli, and Rav Nachman will fit with the Yerushalmi, which we said is the opinion of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, and the way it's taught in the Yerushalmi. So it'll come out that Rav Yosef, who's more like the Yerushalmi, will be fitting over here with the Bavli, and Rav Nachman, who was Mechasidei Bavel, connected to Bavel, will actually fit over here with the Yerushalmi. Now it's understood that Rav Yosef doesn't always have to fit with the Yerushalmi and Rav Nachman with the Bavli. And like we know, they both lived in Bavel, so it's acceptable to say that Rav Yosef will fit with a Bavli. But on the other hand, it's difficult to say that their argument will be in such a way that each takes the other side. If we find Rav Nachman fitting sometimes with the Yerushalmi and Rav Yosef sometimes fitting with the Bavli, that's one thing. But to say that they're arguing with one another, and Rav Yosef, who was Sinai, like the Yerushalmi, will fit with what it says in the Bavli, and Rav Nachman, who is Mechasidei Bavel, will fit with the Yerushalmi in that argument that they're having between one another, it's difficult to say this. So now we're going to move into another side discussion, really directly related to the previous one. So in order to answer this question about the opinion of Rav Nachman, so this will be understood by first discussing the famous question on the statement of Rav Yosef that he said, "Leisisni Anavah the Ikana." Don't read into the Mishnah that Batla Anavah because there's I. And the question is, this itself that Rav Yosef is saying about himself, that he has the quality of Anavah, he has that characteristic, he has that Maila, is the opposite of Anavah. And the explanation in this is, like we said earlier, Anavah doesn't mean what the world thinks it means, which the world thinks it means shiflus, lowliness, because shiflus is when a person knows and recognizes their level and their loneliness. They recognize that they're lowly. So this applies to someone who doesn't possess or doesn't know that they possess good qualities. And so they feel a sense of shiflus, a sense of lowliness, because they really are lowly or they believe that they're lowly. However, the real Anav is, like we said earlier, a great person. It's not limited to being a lowly person. It's a great person who knows their greatness, and still they don't take credit for it. And the reason is, like we said, he knows that all of his good qualities, it's what was given to him from above. And it's possible that if someone else had these koiches, he would reveal these koiches even more. And so similarly, we can explain about the quality of Anavah itself by Rav Yosef. That also in regards to Anavah, Rav Yosef was aware of his quality of Anavah, and at the same time, he knew that Kolin Yonim Alaisav, this Mila that he had of Anavah, whom Ashanitolim Mila was given to him from above. And even more, it's possible, and maybe even believed, certainly that if someone else had these koiches, this koich of Anavah, they would be megaled even more than he did. And this is also what you find that Rav Yosef said about himself, about his learning, the Rav Tvuas B'Kayach Shar. He was saying about the tremendous power of his learning, but he said Rav Tvuas B'Kayach Shar. Through the shar, through the ox, there's Rav Tvuas, you're able to grow a lot of grain, a lot of wheat. But when we look at the example that he gave, it's a very perfect example. It's not just a general example. That just like by the shur, he doesn't actually make the things grow. It's just the work. But the way it grows is when something is planted and then it comes from the different things in the earth. So Rav Yosef also saw himself that way, that he was just an intermediate. He was just a vehicle for the things to happen because of the keiches that were given to him. But he didn't take ownership in a way of it that he felt that it was due to his greatness and he deserved credit for it. Now we're going to move on to another question about Rav Yosef saying, "Leisisni Anavah the Ikana." However, it's still not understood. The Torah that one learns protects one from the Yetzer Hara. And this greatness that Rav Yosef had, that he was protected from his Yetzer Hara, that he was protected from Chet, from Averis, that doesn't come from the Keiches that he was given Mamaila. The Keiches that he was given Mamaila only allow a person to achieve the level of Sinai, a great level of learning, but they don't make one protected from Chet. But rather, where does that come from, that one is protected from Chet? From the person's work that they achieved the level of Sinai. So, just to point out over here, I'm not clear about what exactly is the question. We'll just finish the question and then explain what it seems like the question is and what is not fully clear to me. So the question is, so how was Rav Yosef an Anav when he knew he became a totally different entity? So it seems over here that the Rebbe is saying two things. Number one is that the Anavah only applies with what a person does directly with the koiches they were given. So if Rav Yosef was given tremendous koiches in learning, and as a result he achieved the level of Sinai, so he felt an Anav in that regard, because he knew that it only came from the koiches that he was given from Hashem, and maybe someone else with these koiches would be more successful in revealing these koiches. So in terms of his achieving the level of Sinai, there he had an Anavah, because that's a direct result of the koiches that he was given. However, what comes from the Sinai is already removed from the koiches. what comes from the Sinai, that now he is shomer menachet, he's protected from Averis, that's already removed from the Koiches. It's not a direct result from the Koiches. And so it seems the Rebbe is saying, in those areas, there's no place for Anavah. And I'm not sure what the explanation for that is, but that's what it seems like the Rebbe is saying, that since it's not a direct result from the Koiches, but rather the direct result of the Koiches is that he was Sinai. And from Sinai he became shomer menachet, protected from Averis, so over there's no place for the Anavah, because it's not a direct result of the Koiches. And then another point is that being protected from the Chet makes him into a totally different entity. He became a different entity, and when someone's a totally different entity than everyone else, then there's no place for Anavah. Like we don't say that a person should be an Anavah over animals, because a person's totally different than animals. So there are 2 points over here. I'm not sure the explanation of the first one and how the two of them work together, but the 2 points are, number one, that being shomer menachet is not a direct result from the kaiches that Rav Yosef was given momaila, and so over there's no place for Anavah. The Anavah is only what's a direct result from the kaiches that were given momaila, because then the person can say that if someone else had the kaiches, they would do the same, or they would do even more, and also they're only able to do it because of the kaiches. But what comes from what they do afterwards, that's already not related to the kaiches, and so there's no Anavah there. And also, what he achieved through this is that he became a totally different entity, and when someone's a totally different entity, there's no room for Anavah, just like a person's not an Anav relative to animals. And the answer is that Rav Yosef held that that the Torah protects a person from a chait, it doesn't mean that the Torah is learned on such a high level that it affects a change in the person that they become protected from chait, and they're a totally different person. But rather, Rav Yosef held that the person stays the same, and it's just that the Torah protects the person from chait. And so therefore, just like the learning of the Torah didn't bring Rav Yosef to take credit for himself, because he said it was because of the koiches that were given to him from above, so too he didn't take credit for being protected from chait, since it too is a direct result and continuation of the Torah he learned. It's a direct continuation. Torah has that power. That's the definition of Torah. It protects someone from chait. So if learning the Torah came from the koiches, and the definition of Torah is that it protects someone from chait, so then it's directly related and it results from the koiches that he was given on Mila. And so it's a continuation of the Torah that he learned, and it's not that it made him into a different type of person. So again, we find these two things, that it's a direct result as opposed to coming from the next thing, and also it didn't make him into a different type of person. And so therefore, Rav Yosef was able to have Anavah even in that regard, because he didn't see it as being something totally new and different, which is not connected to the koiches, and something that makes him into a different type of person. But rather he saw it as something inherent and built into the definition of learning Torah, which came from the koiches he was given on Mila. And also, it didn't make him into a different type of person, and so therefore he could have Anavah also regarding that area as well. According to this, we can now come back and answer our earlier questions. We asked that didn't Rav Nachman and Rav Yosef know each other's Mila? So we said, obviously, that was our next question. So we moved, so to speak, the first question. Obviously, they each held that the other one didn't have the Mila that the other one thought that they had. And then the question was, on Rav Nachman specifically, that your scheit is greater than Anavah. So how is it possible that Anavah, which is lower, is batla, and your scheit, which is higher, is not batla? But the first part still has to be explained. We're saying that they obviously held that the other one didn't have the mila that they said that they had. But what's the explanation for that? According to what we said, we can understand it. Because according to this, we can explain why Rav Nachman said only lo yisisni yer scheit de'ika ana, but Anavah was batla from Mishemes Rebbe, even though he knew the greatness in Anavah of Rav Yosef, because Rav Nachman argues with Rav Yosef, and he holds that the Torah does change the person until they are not shaykh to any chait. It does make a transformation. It does make a change in the person. It's not that it just technically protects them. It changes the person, and the person becomes a person who's protected from chait. And so Rav Yosef cannot be an Anavah, like we explained, that if it changes the person, so then there's no place for Anavah anymore. And similarly, we can explain why Rav Yosef didn't say Leisitni Yeschet the Ika Rav Nachman. The Gemara relates the Ime de Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, the mother of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Amr le Kaldoi, an astrologer told her, Brich Gan Vahava, your son will be a Ganav, he'll be a thief. So the Gemara relates that Lo Shavakti Galuye Reishe, the mother of Nachman, never left him with his head uncovered. Amr Lane, she told Rav Nachman, Kasei Reishach, keep your head covered, Ki hechi teheve aloch imsa deshmaya, so that there should be the fear of heaven on you. And she also told him, Uboy Rachmi, ask Hashem, beg Hashem to protect you. And the Gemara says that one time, Nafal Glima Meilove Reishe, the covering fell off his head, Al Me Yitzrein, his Yitzhahara overpowered him. His Yitzhahara became strong. And the Gemara says a story over there with that he was by a palm tree and he jumped on the palm tree that didn't belong to him and he grabbed from the dates. Now the greatness of a Yareh Chet, when we say someone has Yareh Chet, is not that the person doesn't do a Chet. It's not that they just technically don't do a Chet, because that can come from other reasons, like if they're afraid of being punished, they're afraid of other people. So real Yareh Chet is not just that the person doesn't technically do the Chet, but that one is afraid of the Chet itself. There's actually a fear of the Chet, not of the punishment, not of other people, of the Chet. That's Yareh Chet. Whereas the Yareh Chet of Rav Nachman, when it came to that Yareh Chet, so there Rav Yosef held that since it was through Kisei Reish V'Tfilah, it was through having his head covered in Tfilah, so it's not a true Yiras Chet that made him into a different person who has Yiras Chet. And to the contrary, the Kisei Reish had to create in him the Yiras Chet each time. So it wasn't really part of who he was. And even that wasn't enough. And he needed Tfilah. So it wasn't a real Yiras Chet. So that's why Rav Yosef held that the Yiras Chet of Rav Nachman was Yiras Chet, and therefore he didn't say remove Yiras Chet from the Mishnah. And we also see a theme over here. The Rav Yosef held that the change in him from Torah was just a technical change, that the Torah protected him, not that he became a different person. And that's also how we saw the Yiras Chet in Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was the opposite. He saw in Rav Yosef that the Torah changed him into a different person. And so there's no longer the concept of Anavah. You can't have Anavah there. And he also saw in himself that the Yiras Chet was a real Yiras Chet. Now, in regards to the other question, that Yiras Chet is greater than Anavah, so how is it possible that Anavah is Batla and Yiras Chet is not Batla? I did not understand the answer to that. I wasn't able to see where in the Sicha the Rebbe answers the question, or how this answer over here answers that question. So I'm not sure how that second question is answered. Now we find a source, an example of this explanation, whether learning Torah and similarly Kisei Reish and Tfilah affects a change in the person, like the opinion of Rav Nachman, or just stops a person from certain actions, like the opinion of Rav Yosef in Masechtas Brachos. The Gemara over there speaks about the problem of Meir Aglayim, urine, when it comes to Krishma. And the Gemara presents a brisa that says, Kama yota l'seichen mayim, how much water does a person have to put in the urine so that the urine is not a problem? So the Tanakama says it's any amount. Any amount is enough. Kol shehu. And Rabbi Zakkai aim a revius. Rabbi Zakkai says you need a revius. And then the Gemara presents an argument between Rav Nachman and Rav Yosef about the opinion of Rabbi Zakkai that you need a revius. Amar Rav Nachman, machalikas l'basayf. Rav Nachman says the argument is only the basayf, meaning if the urine's already there and now you're pouring in water, then they argue. Tanakama says you need any amount of water and that will be good enough. Rabbi Zakkai says no, you need a revius. But if the water was there first, then kol shein, everybody agrees any amount of water would be good enough. And any amount of urine that's poured into it will not be a problem. Rav Yosef says the opposite. The argument is originally when there was already water there, and then the Tanakama says any amount of water is enough, and Rav Zakkai says you need a revius if the water was there first and then urine was poured into it. But if the urine was there first and now you want to get rid of the urine to take away the problem of the urine by pouring water into it, then Divrei called revius, everybody agrees you need a revius. And Rav Yosef actually did this himself, that he would make sure there was a revius of water there beforehand, before, like the opinion of Rabbi Zakkai, that you need originally a revius in order to mevatel the urine that was poured into it. And just very briefly, what we see over here is Rav Nachman holds that when there is an entity of Taira and Kedusha, beforehand we're talking about Limud Torah and Yiras Chet. In this case, we're talking about the water. So then it's a permanent and a complete and total reality, and it's transformational. The place is a totally different place. It's a place of Kedusha. Also here, it's a place of Taira. And so any amount of urine that goes into it, each amount of urine becomes batel as it goes in. Whereas Rav Yosef says that it's just a technical thing. It's a quantity thing. And so you would need the right amount of quantity in order to be effective. But it's not something of quality that it's established in this place and nothing can go into it. It's just a technical thing, and it has to have the right amount in order to be effective. So we see this idea over there in the Gemara in Brachas. Now we move into a side question based on this answer that we gave for Rav Nachman and Rav Yosef. We move into a side question that relates to our original question at the beginning of the Sicha. According to Rav Nachman, that the Torah changes the person, that they're not shaykh to a chet, which this comes through the person's avodah, and so there's no place for Anavah because they're a totally different person, and it's not something which came from a mila, came through the person's avodah, that they learned and then they became a different person. And we said in such a case there's no place for Anavah. So if so, how was it possible for Rebbe? It says in the Mishnah, Mishemes Rebbe, Batla Anavah v'yiras chet. How did Rebbe have Anavah? And especially Moshe, how is it possible for Rebbe and especially Moshe to be Anavah if the Torah made a change in them? They became totally different. And we said that when the Torah makes a change in the person, and that's what Rav Nachman holds, it makes a change in the person. The Torah makes a change in the person, then there's no place for Anavah. So how is it possible for Rebbe, and especially Moshe, who were definitely completely changed by the Torah, to be an Anav? How is it possible for them to have Anavah? And the answer is, and this answers our original question at the beginning of the Sicha. It's explained in the Likutei Sichos regarding the argument between Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair and Rabbi Shua ben Levi, that Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair holds that Anavah is lower than yiras chet, and Rabbi Shua ben Levi holds that Anavah is greater than yiras chet. So their argument, whether Anavah is lower than yiras chet, like Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, or whether Anavah is greater than yiras chet, and it's the greatest of all levels, like Rabbi Shua ben Levi. So it's explained that there are different levels of Anavah. That's what's explained in the Likutei Sichos. The Anavah that brings to yiras chet, that Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair talks about, is the level of Bina. And the Anavah that is the greatest of all levels, and that's higher than yiras chet as well, is the level of Keser. And in a more simple signon, a more simple style, Anavah of Bina comes from a cheshbon. That's the Anavah that we spoke about. The Anavah that a person thinks to themselves and recognizes and realizes that all the qualities that they have, all the keiches were given from above, and it's not their own. And furthermore, it's possible, and maybe they even feel that it's certain, that if someone else had these keiches, they would be megala them, they would reveal them even more. And then there is Anavah of Keser, which is Anavah be'etzem, that a person is just in a state of Anavah, not based on a calculation, a consideration, and a thought out process, but it's a state of complete and absolute Anavah. So that's the explanation for the argument between Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who says that Anavah is lower, he's talking about the Anavah of Bina, the one of a cheshbon, the one we spoke about throughout the Sicha. And Rabbi Shua ben Levi, that says that Anavah is higher than yiras chet, and it's actually the greatest of all levels. He's talking about Anavah of Keser, the Anavah be'etzem. And that Anavah has nothing to do with a cheshbon, of a calculation. And that's the Anavah that Rebbe and Moshe Rabbeinu had. It's an Anavah that's not related to this cheshbon. When it comes to a cheshbon, you can ask questions. How does he have Anavah if the cheshbon doesn't add up? But when talking about Anavah be'etzem, it's not built on a cheshbon. It's a depth of the state of the person that they are a none of. Like we'll continue and elaborate on it in the next part of the Sicha. To bring a proof to this and to add more to understanding of this, so a proof that there is another be'etzem that's above any cheshbon and reason. So we find another by Hashem, like Razal said, Sham, in that place itself, you find Hashem's anava. So we see that Hashem has anava, and regarding Hashem, there certainly is not a place for anava that comes from a cheshbon. There's no cheshbon that would lead to anava by Hashem. So obviously, we see from here, it's proven that there is such a anava without any cheshbon, and this is anava be'etzem. It's anava that's just there from the essence of Hashem in this case, or like we said earlier, by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and by Moshe Rabbeinu. And so similar to this was the anava of Moshe Rabbeinu, that in addition to the anava of a cheshbon that relates to what he accomplished because of the koiches that Hashem gave him, like we said early, at the beginning of the Sicha, from the Maimarim of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab. So in addition to that, his anava that he had, despite his great level in nevuah, which is something which came from above, and everything similar to it, like we spoke about the Anavah that could be there even when a person has a total transformation from the Limud Torah. So the Anavah that he had, despite all of those things, that was not from a cheshbon, but that was because he was an Anav be'etzem. It came from the essence of his being, a state of being an Anav. And the Sicha concludes with another related idea. It's known that specifically through the way of learning of Bavli, which is through darkness and difficulties and questions, so specifically through that way of learning, one is able to reach the level of Keser Shulamayla Mishtalshlus. And we said that Anavah Be'etzem comes from Keser. And according to this, the argument between Rav Yosef and Rav Nachman, whether or not Mishemes Rebbe Batla Anavah, Rav Yosef holds, Rav Yosef was a Yerushalmi. He holds that it wasn't Batla Anavah, because he had Anavah. So Rav Yosef, who was Sinai, holds that Mishemes Rebbe Batla Anavah. When it says Mishemes Rebbe Batla Anavah, which Anavah is that? That's the Anavah of Bina, that comes from a Cheshbon. That's the only Anavah a person can reach in the level of Sinai, in the level of Yerushalmi. And therefore he said, he had that Anavah, and so don't read Mishemes Rebbe Batla Anavah, because that Anavah still exists. It exists by him. But Rav Nachman, who was Mechasidei Bavel, he holds that Mishemes Rebbe Batla Anavah is the Anavah of Keser, that comes from Anavah Be'etzem. And that Anavah, he said, was Batel, because that's a level that was much, much higher than the Anavah that Rav Yosef was talking about. And so we see how it fits with the point that we mentioned earlier, to begin earlier in the Sicha. The Rav Yosef is connected to Yerushalmi, and Menachem is connected to the Bavli, how their understanding of this Mishnah fits with that. Rav Yosef learns that the Anavah is the Anavah that one could achieve with the level of learning of Sinai of the Yerushalmi, which is Anavah of a Cheshbon. And he said that he had that Anavah, and therefore don't read Mishemes Rebbe Batla Anavah. And Rav Nachman was from Chasidei Bavel, so he said that he understands the Mishnah. He says that there's no Anavah by a person like Rav Yosef. So what does it mean that there was Anavah by Rebbe? That's the Anavah of the level of Keser, the Anavah Be'etzem, and that fits with him being Mechasidei Bavel, that the way of Bavli through the darkness and the difficulties and the challenges that a person can reach the level of Keser, which is harder than Ishtalshlus. And he said that indeed that was the level that Rebbe Yehuda also achieved, and that he's talking about in the Mishnah.